Keeping up with our motto, let learning be a joy and teaching a pleasure, here we are with the remote teaching and learning process to bridge the gap. Happy learning to all students. Hello, students. In today's session, we are going to continue Chapter 3 of History Effects of British Rule. This is the third video of the chapter. I hope you have watched the first two parts of this lesson. So let's begin with part 3. In the last session, the last point we discussed was judicial system, and in that we learnt about high courts, civil courts and criminal courts. So keeping that in mind, we will study equality before law. As you know that in the early times, law in India differed from place to place, as there were different princely states and laws were different in the courts of different rulers. The judgment was based on casteism. During British Raj, under the leadership of Lord Macaulay, a committee was set up to create the code of law, one law for everyone. So, the Indian Penal Code was enforced all over British India with British principle of equality before law. Now, you know that equality before law means that there will be no discrimination on the basis of caste, religion, status of an individual. And this equality before law is also there in our fundamental rights of right to equality. So, this Indian Penal Code is a law book in which there are articles related to different crimes and punishments related to them. Now, Britishers tried to implement equality for everyone, but there were some defects in this. There were separate codes and different laws for the Europeans. New laws were difficult to understand by the common people. To fight a legal case became very expensive for the common people, and because of this, the cases remained pending for years together. So you can see that one on the one hand side they are trying to show equality, but on the other hand they are just making discriminations. Next, we will see the economic policies of the British. As you know that many foreign invaders attacked India in ancient times, such as Arabs, Muhammad Ghuri, invasions by Timur, the Mongols, and so on. And many of these invaders settled in India and they were absorbed in Indian culture. Even though these rulers ruled in India, they never made any changes in the basic Indian economic system. But the Britishers were an exception. How? Let's see. As we know that England was a modern nation because industrialization began there first. And due to industrialization, capitalist economy prevailed. Now, what is capitalist economy and capitalism? You can see the definition. An economic system in which the means of production of goods or services are privately owned and operated for a profit. These private companies determines where to invest and what to produce or sell. So with this new economic system inculcated in India, which was favorable to economic system in England, means everywhere the Britishers saw their benefit. Now, what happened with this? Due to this, Britishers gained economic benefit, but India started facing economic exploitation. Now, we will see the land revenue policy under economic policies. Before the British rule, the village economic system was self sufficient. It means through agriculture and other related services, the needs of the village were fulfilled in the village only. Land revenue was the main source of income of the state. This revenue was based on the type of crops cultivated by the farmers. But sometimes, as you must have learned in the previous lessons and you must have seen in some movies also, the farmers had to face loss of crops due to less rain. Then they were exempted or freed from these taxes or revenues. There was no force. So government was understanding their condition. Even if they got late to pay tax, their land was not confiscated or seized by the government or by the rulers. But Britishers made changes in this revenue system. Why? Just to increase their income. What they did? They measured the land of farmers, and as per the area of the land, tax was fixed. Before the British rule, revenue was mainly collected in the form of grains, but now the payment of tax was made compulsory in the form of cash. If the farmers failed to pay tax in time, then their land would be confiscated. It means they were doing just opposite the Indian government or the Indian rulers of those time. This British system of land revenue collection also differed from place to place, and this led to the exploitation of all farmers. Now we will see the consequences of new land revenue system. We can say that there were undesirable effects of the new land revenue system on the rural life. For payment of taxes, Indian farmers started selling the crops at whatever price it received. It means the merchants and brokers or the middlemen started purchasing their goods at minimum rate. So now you can understand their condition. At certain times, farmer has to mortgage his land to the money lender just to make arrangement of money to pay the tax. In case of non-payment of loan, the farmer had to sell his land. It means they were forced to sell land to pay their debts. So what would be the result? They started becoming bankrupts. In this way, the farmers were exploited by the government, zamindars, money lenders, and merchants. Now, what Britishers did with the agriculture? Let's see. Commercialization of agriculture. This is the definition: the process of giving stress on cultivation of profit giving cash crops instead of food grains is known as the commercialization of agriculture. Initially, food grains were cultivated by the farmers to use it for their domestic needs as well as for the needs of the village. But the British government started giving more encouragement to cash crops like tobacco, cotton, indigo, tea, etc. Cash crop is also called crop. So now you can understand from its name that these agricultural crops are grown to sell for profit only. So this will only benefited the Britishers. Next, we will see famine. As you know that famine is an extreme scarcity of food, and India faced great famine from 1860 to 1900. But the British rulers did not take much efforts to overcome it. The inaction of the British became the cause of the severity of the famines, and because of this millions of people lost their lives. Britishers didn't even spend enough money on irrigation projects. It means that they did not make any provision of water supply to help the people. Because as we know that droughts are the main cause of uh, famine, because crops are mainly dependent on rain. So then they didn't even made any provision for the water supply. And these are some of the examples of the famine faced by India from 1860 to 1900. The Orissa famine, 1866 to 67, Bengal and Eastern India, 1873 to 74, the Great Famine of 1876 and 8. Why is it called great? Because near about 10.3 million people died during that time. So now you can see the condition of farmers in British Raj. So that's all for today, students. Hope you understand everything taught today. If you have any doubt, please note it down and we will discuss it when we will meet in online doubt solving session. What you have to do, just find out the information about the famine that took place in the last 10 years in India and write it down. Thank you. Thank you so much.